Hello, students. Welcome to this class. We are on the chapter 2 of class 11 psychology, that is methods of inquiry in psychology. Okay, we'll start with an example. Students, imagine you walk into your classroom and notice that one student who is usually cheerful and active has become quiet, avoids friends, and doesn't participate in class. What would you think? Some of you might say maybe the student is upset, perhaps there is a family problem, maybe they didn't sleep well. But can we conclude the real reason just by looking at the student? No. This is exactly where psychology differs from everyday thinking. Psychologists do not rely on assumptions, they rely on scientific inquiry. So, in this chapter, Methods of Enquiry in Psychology teaches us how psychologists collect accurate information, analyze it scientifically, and reach reliable conclusions about human behavior. So, always remember, psychology is not about guessing behavior, it is about understanding behavior scientifically. So, we already have discussed introduction part in our previous videos. We directly start today from the goals of psychological inquiry. Right? So, okay. Tell me, why do psychologists study human behavior? There are four main goals. Okay, first is description, because to describe behavior accurately. For example, a school counselor observes that a child cries every Monday morning when the school continue after the Sunday. The counselor simply record when does it happen, how long does it last, what triggers it. No conclusions yet, right? So it is the description part to describe behavior accurately. After that only we come to conclusion. Now second goal of the psychological inquiry is the prediction, to predict future behavior, right? For example, a teacher notices that students who regularly miss homework often score lower in exams. Here, what the teacher predicts, if homework continues to be ignored, exam performance may decline. So, this is the prediction by the teacher. If it is cause and effect, means one, if one is not done, then it may affect the other. Like if homework continues to be ignored, exam performance may decline. So prediction does not mean certainty, it is based on evidence. Always it is based on evidence. Now next is explanation, means to understand the cause of behavior. That is explanation. So understand why behavior occurs. For example, why is a child becoming aggressive? Possibly it is explained as bullying, family conflict, frustration due to lack of emotional regulation. So, always psychologists investigate before explaining. Means what are the causes before that situation. So, always psychologists investigate. So, explanation is to understand the causes of behavior. Now, next is control, means to modify or manage behavior. What does it mean? For example, a child has examination anxiety, right? Then the school psychologist teaches the child about relaxation techniques, deep breathing, mindfulness techniques, positive self talk, time management. So, to control or manage the behavior, that is the psychological goals of the psychological inquiry. The aim is not to control the child but to help manage behavior. Okay, now then after that it comes application, to use that knowledge for the improvement of human life. That is basically the main goal of the psychological inquiry. But before the application, we need to describe, predict, explain, and techniques to control or manage behavior. After that, we can apply to use that knowledge for the improvement of human life. Now, steps in conducting scientific research. So, what are the steps in conducting scientific research? Right, you can see here. First is conceptualizing a problem. Means first we need to identify the problem, research problem. So, what is research problem? Research problem is what you are going to study, right? That is your research problem. What you are going to analyze, what you are going to do the research part, your study part, that is your research problem. So first of all, we need to identify and defining the research problem. For example, why are students, one example, like our research problem is why are students becoming distracted during online classes? This is a research problem. Before that, you have to understand what is your study, what you are going to do the apply that knowledge. Okay, that is your research problem. So first of all, you need to identify or define your research problem. Then you know, get to know about your research problem. You are going to study on that particular topic or particular content or particular problem. Now you need to collect data, right? For example, you need to gather information using appropriate methods. So before, in our first chapter, we already have discussed about the appropriate methods. Now, in this chapter, we are going to explain each and every methods elaborately. That we'll discuss in our next slides. Now, it is the conducting scientific research. These are the steps. Gathering information using appropriate methods. What are that methods? We have discussed observation, through interviews, questionnaires, some psychological tests are there, right, to measure the anxiety level, okay, behavioral disorders. So there are so many psychological tests available to help us to know or measure the particular problem, right, in psychology. So second is collecting data. Now then we have collected data. First we get our problem. This is the research study. For that we need to collect data, and then we need to analyze data. Okay, how could we analyzing data? By organizing and interpreting the collected information. Whatever we get information, whatever we gather information, using appropriate methods, now we need to analyze data. So data is organized through statistics. Okay, so statistics are used to analyze data. For example, if we need to survey for 150 students, the researchers calculate percentages and averages, okay, mean, median, standard deviation. So these are the measures of analyzing data. So some of the softwares are also available. Most of our psychological research data analyzed through software, that is SPSS. Okay, SPSS is mostly used for the psychological research to analyze data. Now next is drawing conclusion. Now we analyze data. First we collect data, then analyze data. Now we need to draw conclusions. Whatever we have, what are the findings are there, we need to conclude that. So reaching findings based on evidence, right? So suppose data shows students sleeping less than 6 hours perform poorly academically. Okay, so this is the conclusion. So what is the conclusion here is sleep is associated with academic performance. Okay, so this is the conclusion. Means one variable is dependent on the other variables, right? So always in your research there are variables which are going to be measurable, right? Independent variable, dependent variable. So these are the variables on which we are going to conduct our study. For that, we need to collect data, analyze data, and we draw conclusions on that variables, right? Now next is revise conclusion, means revising research conclusion. Now modifying conclusion if new evidence is available. ठीक है, whatever our research question is, what is our research problem, if our conclusion is what we have, what we are finding, what we get from analyzing data, if our research problem and the conclusion differs, a new evidence is available. So that means our hypothesis is whether we are analyzing null hypothesis or whether we are going to analyze alternate hypothesis. Okay, so these are the research conclusion. So these are the steps for conducting scientific research. Okay, finding the research problem, collecting data, analyzing, drawing conclusion, and revising research conclusion. So these are the steps in conducting scientific research. Now we are going to discuss about nature of psychological data. Okay, now what is in it? So psychologists collect different types of data. Okay, now we have discussed we need to collect data. So what are the types of data? Okay, first is demographic information. We need I've explained you, there are variables are there, right? Independent variables or dependent variables. We need to know if our the population is human based population, we need age, gender, education, occupation, etc., right? So this is demographic information. Then we need physical information, means height, weight, body build, health condition, etc. Then we need physiological data, heart rate, blood pressure, brain activity, hormonal levels, etc. Then psychological information, their intelligence level, personality, what type of personality they have, attitudes, interests, motivation. Okay, then environmental information, means family background, school environment, culture, social condition, etc. So it fairly depend upon our research study. What is our research study? According to that, we need to collect data. And what type of data, nature of psychological data is that demographic, physical information, psychological data, physiological data, environmental information. So these are the nature of data. Now next we are going to okay, two children may have similar intelligence but different family environments, so leading to different academic outcomes. So this is we get from this nature of psychological data. Now methods of inquiry in psychology. Okay, so these are the methods of inquiry in psychology. So first is observational method. So what is observational method? Observation, what does the observation means? It is carefully watching behavior, right? We are discussing psychological inquiry. So here the observational method means to observe or watch carefully the behavior. And the types are, it's naturalistic observation, means behavior observed in natural settings. Then controlled observation, behavior observed in controlled condition. Participant observation, researchers become part of the group. And non-participant observation means researchers observes from outside. Now okay, tell me, we'll discuss with example. Can teachers use observation every day? Yes. Okay, teachers observe attention, behavior, social interaction, learning difficulties in students. So this is the observational method of a teacher, right? So it might be naturalistic, controlled, participant observation, okay, non-participant observation. So it depends upon the observer, right? Now, what are the advantages? Provide real life data useful for natural behavior, and there is limitation also. Observers sometimes might be become biased because presence of observer may influence behavior. Sometimes children behave good in front of the teachers, then it is not feasible for the teacher to get the conclusion from that behavior of a child. Then next is experimental method. It is basically used to establish cause and effect relationship by manipulating variables. So independent variables means variables manipulated by the researchers. Dependent variables means variables measured by the researcher. Then experimental group means receives the treatment. Control group means does not receive the treatment. So what does it mean? So what is the purpose? Means to find cause and effect relationship, right? For example, um, does listening to soft instrumental music improve concentration? Yes. Group A studies with music, and group B, for example, group A studies with music, group B studies without music. So when we compare the test scores of both the groups, if group A performs better, music may have influence concentration. If group B performs better, means music does not require for the concentration. But basically, music may have influenced concentration. Okay. So what are the advantages? High control helps in determining casualties. What are the limitation? Artificial setting means ethical concerns may arise from this type of method, means experimental method. Now come to the next method of psychological study, that is correlational research. Okay. It examines the relationship between two variables without manipulating them. Okay. It studies relationships. Basically, it studies the relationship. Okay. Positive correlationship, that is both variables increase or decrease together. Negative correlation means one variable. Okay. Only there is only one variable. Zero correlation means no relationship between variables. So in negative correlation, only one variable increase or decrease, but in zero correlation, no relationship between variables have been seen. So correlation does not imply causalities. Means, okay, for example, hours of study and examination marks. So this is the relation between, if hours of study and the examination marks need to be examined. Now, what is a positive correlation? Means more study, higher marks. What is a negative correlation? Means more mobile use, lower concentration. So here one variable depends upon the another variable. It is measured, so it has been seen, then one variable depends upon the other, means cause and effect relationship has been seen. So in correlation research, it examines the relationship between two variables. Always in correlation research, there are two variables, and correlation does not prove causation. Okay, what does it mean? Because two things occur together does not mean one causes the other. So okay. Now next is survey research. What is survey? It is collecting information from many people about their opinions, attitudes, etc. Methods required questionnaires, interviews, and okay, for example, if a school surveys students about stress, bullying, or career choices, so it covers large population and saves time and cost. If we need to collect information from a mass, okay, we use survey research. Okay, it helps to, what are the advantages? It helps to cover large population, saves time and cost, And there is a limitation also, responses may not always be honest or accurate. So this is the limitation also for this method. The next is psychological testing. Use of standardized tools to measure psychological characteristics. So characteristics of good test means reliable, valid. It measures what it claims based on norms. Types of tests are there: intelligence test, personality test, aptitude test, interest inventories are there, right? For example, before identifying a child with learning difficulty, a psychologist administer standardized assessment. Then only the psychologist come to the conclusion whether that child has that disorder or not, right? So it is always it always on the evidence based results. Now, case study method, an in-depth study of an individual, a group or event, that is case study. Particular, if we are going to study a particular person or particular thing, that is a case study. Particular study, an in-depth study of an individual, group or event, that is case study method. So detailed study of one individual. Okay, for example, psychologists study one child with autism spectrum disorder for 1 year. It's a longitudinal study type of research. Now, what is the advantage? Provides detailed and comprehensive information. What are the limitation? Findings may not be generalized or other. Okay, we get detailed understanding, but it is generalized to everyone because everyone knows that case. So it is not that personalized, it is generalized to everyone. Okay, so these are the methods of inquiry in psychology. Now next is analysis of data. Okay, now we get our data, we collected our data, then there are two ways to analyze data, that is quantitative analysis and qualitative analysis. Okay, there are two approaches, quantitative and qualitative. So quantitative uses numbers and statistics to analyze data objectively. For example, when we calculate mean, correlation, percentage, so that is a quantitative analysis, right? And what is qualitative? It focuses on understanding experiences and meanings. Means interviewing parents about their child's emotional development, that is qualitative analysis. It is particular type of analysis focuses on understanding experiences and meaning. Now, what are the limitations of psychological inquiry? Human behavior is complex and cannot be fully understood, as we know. And for example, when a student may behave differently at home, in school, with friend, so behavior depends on context, right? Researchers may also have biases, and ethical issues limit certain experiments. So how could we say? So human behavior is complex and cannot be fully understood. So behavior changes from one situation to another. So researchers' bias means may influence the result. Ethical restrictions limit certain types of studies. Generalizing finding to all individuals is difficult. So these are some limitations of psychological inquiry, right? Now, ethical uses of psychological research. Why we need to use ethics in our research? So it is voluntary participation, right? Okay, participants take part willingly without any pressure. So these are ethics in the research. We need to take consent, voluntary participation. If participant does not want to participate in your research, you are not going to pressurize, right? Participant take part willingly without any pressure. So no one should be forced. So next is informed consent. Participants are informed about the purpose and procedures and give consent. Must know. Participants must know the purpose. What is the purpose of the research study and what you are going to do. The whole procedure they must know, priorly, and the risk factors, if there is any, they should know everything. And we need to keep confidentiality, means information provided by participants is kept secret and used only for research, right? Personal information remain private. um, for example, a school counselor never shares a student's personal problems with classmates. So this is, we need to maintain confidentiality. Then debriefing means participants are informed about the true purpose of the study after its completion, means why we need to do this research, we need to brief them, right? Participants are informed about the purpose after the study is, if necessary. Now, protection from harm. So researchers ensure the physical and mental safety of participants. So what is the key takeaway from this discussion? Means methods of inquiry are the foundation of psychology as a science. They help psychologists collect accurate data, understand behavior, test theories, and apply knowledge to solve real life problems in a scientific and ethical manner. Okay, student. Um, you need to do one activity. Suppose your school wants to know why many students feel stressed before examination, right? Which method would you choose? Okay, just think about this. We already discussed about the methods: survey method, observation method, interview, psychological testing. What method would you choose? This help, okay, this will help you, whatever our discussion discussed today. So just get this answer, what type of method we use if we need to know why many students feel stressed before examination. Okay, student, today we learned that psychology is much more than understanding emotions, right? It is a scientific discipline. Psychologists observe carefully, collect evidence, analyze data, follow ethical principles, and draw conclusion based on facts rather than assumptions. Okay, so you are future students of psychology, so always remember this. Good psychologists do not guess behavior, they investigate it scientifically, right? So thank you everyone. So in our next class we will continue with our next chapter and exploring how psychological research help solve real life problems and improve people's well-being.